On September 27th, 2023, I paid a matchmaker £18,000, the equivalent of $21,780 US, to help on my search for love. Why would I do that? How does matchmaking in the modern era even work? And perhaps more importantly, did it work? Did I find love? Today I'm going to share the story about how I got a matchmaker in 2023, a story that I've actually been very hesitant to share for the last 2 years for reasons that are probably kind of obvious, but maybe some a little bit less so. I'm going to talk today about why I did it, how it works, which I'm sure most of you are probably most interested in. How does matchmaking work? And then of course I'll answer the questions around, did it work? In case you don't know me, I'm Jay Swanson. I live in Paris, the city of love. And boy have I learned a lot about love in the last couple of years. The why is actually a huge part of the reason that I've been hesitant to share this story for so long. In fact, it's probably I would say, the only thing that makes me more hesitant to share this, or that has rivaled it, has simply been the price tag. This is the most money I have spent on anything in my adult life, including my education, I think. I'm pretty sure college, maybe not when you count for inflation. Aside from the price tag, and I mean, I'm sure we will talk about that a little bit more in the was it worth it section, but the why. The obvious thing that I think a lot of people feel today is that dating is hard. Their loneliness is at an all-time high. So is singleness. Nobody's having sex, and yet everybody's sexy. I forget who said that, but it rings kind of true. It's just the internet's full of thirst traps. The apps are an absolute cluster for both men and women, just for completely different reasons. Everything in the dating universe is it just feels tough. And maybe it's always been tough. Getting professional help with this aligns then with so many other areas that I've gotten professional help, whether that's therapy, coaching, business consultants, all these other things. It's just kind of like, well, yeah, maybe I could use some help. But where I really needed the help, probably more than anything, was in breaking patterns and making better choices. This is the deeper thing that I've had to go through, both in therapy, and then actually the matchmaking was a huge help for this. I've written at length about this in the book that I'm working on right now, follow-up to my other book, Sea of the Unknown, that you can get right now, plug. But the journey through therapy, through dealing with the neglect of my childhood, through dealing with all of the aftermath of that, of complex post-traumatic stress disorder and all these things that have plagued me my entire life that I wasn't fully aware of, and that I'm sure I'm still not fully aware of. I'm working my way through. So much of that is falling into the patterns of love that we grew up with, the pain that I was raised with, the neglect, the avoidance, the inability to actually figure out how to be loved. I had a really, really difficult childhood when it came to the love of my mother in particular. I made a long video about that, like, I guess 6 months ago. I can link to that if you're interested. And how is it that I pursue relationships that are healthy when what I'm attracted to is inherently unhealthy? And before I started matchmaking, I did start therapy a long time ago. I was working through this, had a couple of really rough, like, greatest hits, going back to some of my worst patterns that really shook me and gave me pause. Like, I took a huge break from dating before coming around to matchmaking. And a big part of the reason I ended up doing it was because I had friends who suggested it, who had friends of their own for whom it had worked, mostly in New York. And they were just like, why don't you try this? Like, get some help looking for people, find people based on their values, where they're trying to go, what they want to do, what they have done in life before you like dive into something that may be a little bit questionable. So breaking the patterns and focusing on values first were huge. And also it just sounds appealing, right? Like having somebody that's going to help sift through the mountain of profiles out there on the internet and find that small percentage of people that seem like they, at least on paper, are going to be a good fit for you. That sounds great, right? Why not do that? And then the final piece to this is probably the accountability, like that having somebody looking over your shoulder, both to ask you a bunch of questions on the front end, like, are you looking for the right things? Obviously, physical attraction is always going to be in there. However, are you looking at only that? Are you looking at the thrill you get from the fact that this person probably is about to treat you like garbage? Or are you looking at, like, this is this woman's values, this is where she wants to go, this is possibly a good alignment. What are you doing? And then after you go on the date, how are you reacting? Having somebody sitting there on your shoulder like a little angel, or I'm probably mostly angel, hopefully, sounded appealing as well. The other angel that was on my shoulder, did I have two angels going? But the long-standing angel on my shoulder, of course, through all this was my therapist, and being able to talk through a lot of the things. I knew that I had issues with my mom. I knew that she was the root of so many of my struggles and my battles with women in particular. But without her help, I would not have been able to walk up to that, to walk through it, and to get into the depths of the trauma therapy that I've had to go through over the last few years. And if you're looking for somebody to help you out, the paid partner of this video is BetterHelp. BetterHelp's been coming along and supporting me through this journey. It's interesting because as I've been digging into my old journals, and we'll get into like my old journals here in a second to walk you through exactly how this whole thing has gone. BetterHelp actually pops up from time to time because they've been supporting me for quite a while. BetterHelp, if you're unfamiliar, is a platform that connects you with credentialed professionals across a wide variety of spectrums. And I know you can find some good relationship coaching, dating advice, and just somebody to walk you through a lot of these tricky, stressful situations on BetterHelp. BetterHelp works via text, via phone call, and via video call, and they will let you swap providers with no questions asked until you find the person that's a great match for you, which is really good because finding that match to walk you through finding your big match, capital M, is definitely a support structure that I can fully, highly recommend. I'm so grateful for my therapist. I'm so grateful for the support from BetterHelp. Thank you so much for supporting this video. And if you'd like to support my channel while getting support from BetterHelp, that was a lot of supports, then use my link, betterhelp.com/jswanson. I'll put it below. Of course, you can just type it in, betterhelp.com/jswanson. So how did it work? That's the big thing. People are usually, I've told my friends all know about this, and a lot of people in my life know about this. I have not been secretive about it in that way. My matchmaker, who asked to remain anonymous, works for a very large agency. The research that I did when I was looking into this, because I actually thought about doing this back in like 2014 after going through a catastrophic breakup and being on the road all the time, I saw an ad in like an in-flight magazine and thought, yeah, maybe getting help while I'm jet setting around the country makes a lot of sense. I really wasn't ready for a relationship back then, and I'm really glad that I didn't spend the money back then. That would have been, it would have been an experience, just like this was. But in all the research that I've done, kind of the theme that I saw was very much that you get what you pay for. There are matchmaking services that run you $20. You can have somebody introduce you to their buddy, or all the way up to the hundreds of thousands. You can literally spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this. And I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a millionaire. I'm like a thousandaire of some sort. So like, that's not for me. However, at the time I had saved up a chunk of money because I was looking to road trip somewhere. You might remember that I got my dog and my driver's license, my French driver's license. I already had my US one, but I got all these things together and I was like, I'm going to buy a car. And I actually signed the lease for a Volvo electronic vehicle that was on this amazing short-term lease program that was too good to pass up. It was a little bit expensive, but it was a short-term lease program, minimum 3 months, and after that I could return it whenever I wanted. I could upgrade cars every year. There was no maintenance on my part. If it got stolen or like burned to the ground, I was just released from the contract. It was perfect. And the day before they were set to deliver, they didn't. And it took me 6 months to find out why. Turned out they just canceled the whole program because I think they realized this is too good of a deal. And when that happened, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be thinking about road tripping because I don't want to road trip alone. The whole idea of traveling and visiting France, because I really want to road trip all of France. Like, I want to see everything. I've seen a fair amount of France, Europe. I just want to do even more. I don't want to do that alone. I've traveled a lot alone. I've been to 40, 50 countries by myself. I've taken my dog to a handful of countries, but like, that's not the same. I love my dog, but it's not the same. I've learned a lot about love through my dog. So I had a chunk of money sitting there that I had saved. 2023 was a really good year for me financially. I had just money sitting there. And it was one of those things too, bad advice, but we were like, let's spend the money, so we're not spending on taxes. Okay. So we got coaching at the same time that I got a matchmaker. And between the two, it was genuinely the most money I was so stressed. And I can get into that with my journal here in a second. But I'm going to tell you first how the matchmaking worked. Do I tell you first how the matchmaking worked, or do I tell you about how I got to making the decision? I guess they kind of go hand in hand. It was very, very stressful. Like I said, it was one of the most expensive things I've ever purchased. And I had a lot of questions about it. And so I met with them on September 11th, auspicious, 2023. And I wrote down a bunch of questions that I had in advance. And again, they've asked to remain anonymous, so I'm not going to tell you who I met with, but they are located in London because Paris, this doesn't surprise me. The French, not so into the whole matchmaking thing. They're very curious about it, but it's not a service that exists here. And so I kind of wrote down what I was looking for and some ideas that I had up front. It's both honest and cute at the same time. I was looking for someone conscientious, cool, and consistent. Blah. That's not untrue, but like the ability to communicate around romance is one of the single greatest advances I think I've made through the last 2 years. The questions I had were like, how do you find and assess matches? How do you present them to me or me to them? What will or won't you guarantee? What's the main thing or the most common thing that prevents client success? And at the end of our conversation, is there any additional advice you feel confident to give? That's where I started. To answer those questions, one, they find and assess matches by headhunting them. It's basically a converted executive headhunting firm through word of mouth and through other passive members. We'll get to passive members here in a second. Those referrals then turn into interviews. They interview them and then they put them into the system along with like a background check. They're just making sure they are who they say they are. They present both directions. They give like a very full presentation of this person's profile that takes like 10 minutes to get through. Here's their life story, what they love, what they do, where they're going, etc. And at the very end, then they show you photos after you're like, yeah, this person sounds good or not. They kind of get you on the hook. But not all matchmaking services will show you photos. So that was a distinction. I asked what they would guarantee. They said a minimum of 8 dates. They do not guarantee true love. They do guarantee that you'll, over the course of a year, go on 8 dates, maybe more, but 8. The most common thing that prevented client success, they said, was a lack of self-awareness and open-mindedness. I'm pretty self-aware and generally I'm pretty open-minded. I've really practiced it through this whole thing. And at the end of the conversation, she let me know that I'm awesome. I'm self-aware, handsome, and deserving, which was very nice of her. Nice little pep talk. There are about 18,000 people in their passive membership. So if we talk about the memberships, when you're paying, you get an active membership, right? So you're active for a year, which means that there are 35 staff members on the team that are all working with different clients. There are only ever about 200 active clients at a time, and they're working directly and actively for those 200 people to find love. They have a database that they maintain of 18,000 passive members, people that are in the system, but only have about a 5% chance of ever actually going on a date. The paid members have a guaranteed number of dates, passive members do not. If I were able to link you, I could refer you to become a passive member, so maybe you'd be in their database. But as we've established, I cannot. I did pass a few of my friends on to be passive members, which was pretty fun. Only, I think 1 or 2 of them have gotten calls, so which is pretty fun. The numbers that they gave me at the beginning too were that the private or the active members of men, 90% would find a match. 85% of women would find a match, pretty evenly split between men and women who are active members. They usually don't match active members. They're usually looking out into the passive membership. However, they did at one point match me with an active member, maybe 2. I think that's a different story actually. But then they have a broader network. So they had multiple offices and then a broader network of ambassadors, people that they've recruited to do some headhunting for them out in the field in interesting places, meeting interesting people, filtering them in as they discover, oh, this person is single, attractive, interesting, let's put them in the database. In the end, it all comes down to chemistry, but they would assess after every date. They take feedback from both people and then give that to me to let me know how I did. I think I only ever got 1 bad note, but I had more than 1 bad date. But hopefully I was a good date every time. And even on the one where I got a bad note, she still said she was open to seeing me again, so it wasn't that bad of a note, right? I hope. This is where it's also uncomfortable because I feel like I'm really putting myself out there here for all the judgment in the world, but hey, this is what I signed up for. They also had a celebrity psychologist on, and I don't know if she's really a celebrity. I got the vibe she's a celebrity. I'm not going to say more than that. On staff, who I did end up getting to meet once, included pro bono kind of a thing. They did it occasionally, but they made her available along with coaching. So you had a matchmaker, and then if you wanted to pay more, you could get a coach. And I paid just for the matchmaker, which I think was good. I think that was a good choice. That's more or less how it worked, but it was not an easy decision for me. Initially, it was funny. I was going back through my journal to see where I was at, and the day before I actually made the payment, had moved some money around. It makes me kind of stressed thinking about it right now. I wrote down 4 parts of the stress, the elements of the stress that I was facing, because I was definitely very, very stressed out. These are the 4 things that I put down when I was stressing out. Part 1 was avoidance, because spoiler alert, disorganized. And working through it. Secure leaning, if you're in the attachment vocabulary, but have had to do a lot of work on it. And I was feeling avoidant. I can read this to you. Approaching dating and relationships in such a tangible and committed manner is frightening on a deep level. Am I worth this kind of investment? The risk? Love? Genuine questions at the time. Part 2, rejection. Oh, rejection. I think this is in reference to the matchmaking service itself. I've already put myself up for rejection once by reaching out at all. I've done so a second time by standing by my need for clarity surrounding my intention to vlog about it someday. Heyo. As well as by being forthcoming about my bankruptcy, since it was explicitly listed in the "as long as you aren't hiding anything from us, such as blank" clause of the membership agreement. And I can link to that video. Do you really want to, like, it's been quite a journey the last few years. I've come a long ways. Part 3, finances. I haven't spent this much money on anything since college. Still struggling a bit with my poverty mentality. This is a big statement for an abundance mindset. And part 4, blindness. I struggle to see and believe in a future where I have found and successfully built a healthy, happy, enriching relationship with a woman to whom I am both wildly attracted and enjoy for her company as a friend and confidant. It's hard to see when you were born into not that and you don't feel like you've ever really I've struggled with that for a long time. So here are my responses to those 4 things. Number 1, I choose to engage. Number 2, I choose to take the risk. Number 3, I choose to make the statement. And number 4, I choose to believe. And below that, I wrote, it may seem so much easier for other people to find love, but I accept the path I'm on and I will not give up. I choose to trust the process, to trust myself. That night, I remember calling my dad. I was in Anglet, which is in the Basque Country. I was on the coast. And I remember walking along the water, just stressing balls and being like, what am I doing? This is insane. And my therapist didn't encourage me to do it. She'd been encouraging me to get the car. And now she's encouraging me to do this. I now understand why. My dad also encouraged me to do it because he was like, you've never made a tangible statement like this about your self-worth. And I really hope you do it. Last minute I was like, what if it's a scam? What if they're just going to take my money and run? What if they are like, yeah, here's Tammy. We met her 3 minutes ago at the Starbucks. She said you looked cute. Have a nice conversation. By the way, she's a serial killer and good luck. I had a lot of these questions and last minute freakouts, and I made those choices. I was like, no, I'm going to choose to believe in myself, to believe I'm worthy of this, to believe that it's possible, and I'm just gonna lean into it. And so the next day, the 27th, I wired the money, which was very stressful. And then within 24 hours, one of the biggest things that I noticed was that my inner monologue, the voices, the way that I speak to myself, got quieter and got kinder. And that alone was worth every penny. Immediately. I knew going into it, there's a bunch of stuff in here. At a minimum, I know that I'm going to come out of this having been made a better person as a result. I know that I'm going to have to face a lot of things that I can easily avoid without something like this. I'm going to be on the hook. I'm going to be committed. And it's going to push me. And I knew that was going to be true. I hoped that I would find love through it, obviously. That would have been a great success. But I also knew going into it, I believed that it was going to be a healing process. And the fact that within 24 hours, I felt significantly better just about myself, and instantly made it worth it. Very expensive way to do it, but sometimes it costs a lot to fix our brains. There were a lot of things in here as we got started, the process of it actually operating, where they sat down and they worked through what are your values, getting to know me. I got a matchmaker who did specialize in attachment theory. They got to know where am I going, where have I been, trying to figure out who are you and what would be a good fit for you. In that sense that there's this wheel that I have here actually that I copied from their, I don't know if you can see that I copied from their presentation on this. And they were like, we want to go through all these elements of a compatible partner, whether that's career and learning, relationship history, finances, friendship, recreation, etc. And that was really valuable. They also gave me a book that I read. Maybe sit down and write. There's a whole list here of people that I sat down and I just wrote all the people in my life who love me and how they love me. And there are even more that I didn't get to because I just kind of stopped because I was, a little bit maybe overwhelmed even actually. I just tried to write down a few different ways that people love me in my life. And I came to realize pretty quickly through this process like how I'm already very rich in love. So the actual dating process did look like what they said. They would pitch me like 6 or so women at a time. I would generally say yes to all of them. I tried to remain very open. She would then pitch me to them. They would come back with like a yes or a no, 50-50. And most of them were in London. So I was going to London a lot for dates. And early on, I had a Zoom date. I ended up having a couple of Zoom dates over the course of the time. And I ended up going on a bunch of dates in person. The first date I went on in person was rough, very closetedly racist. And some other issues that I reported back to my matchmaker, who was quite surprised, but she said things. And then the next date I went on was amazing. I was actually a fellow YouTuber, of all things. I really enjoyed it. I think I was just like a little bit too raw, to be honest, like just kind of let myself go. I was very much a little bit too authentic for a first date. Let's just say it that way. But for whatever reason, she was not interested in me. So that was kind of the back and forth that happened. For the most part, I wasn't really that interested in most of the women that I talked to, that I went out with. There were a couple that I was, and there was one that I did go out with a few times. For the most part, I got better and better at just kind of like trusting my gut and saying no as time went on. 2024 was really rough, as I've shared in the other videos recently. The Olympics, starting up another brand with my.pocket, getting that going. Huge dip in revenue, massive stress around payroll. Couldn't really afford to keep going to London to go on dates. And so with your year-long active membership, you also get 6 months of pause, hold time. And so I used all of that to weather that storm. Ended up in the hospital from the stress. And about the time I ended up in the hospital from the stress, I met someone through friends who I did date for like 6 weeks or something like that. And then things kind of unraveled, unfortunately. It was very good. It was like probably one of the healthiest relationships I've ever had. It was very cozy. I actually just ran into her like for the first time in a year, a week or two ago, and it was really nice to see her. Just warm feelings. It just kind of ended because it was bad timing more than anything. And that's fine. And I don't think we're meant for each other. But it was a really good sign that I was very much on my way to being ready to have a good, healthy relationship. And that's kind of the big thing through all this, is I've really tracked with my growth, my development as a person. Yes, there have been some kind of missed opportunities. Yes, there have been some amazing people that I've met that just weren't the right fit. There was one date I went on that was going great until she found out what I do for work, more specifically. And then she pulled a 180 and was not into it at all. So that is important. It's important to know. Others were just, I don't know, it just kind of fizzled, or I just knew and opted to say no. I only went on like one date in Paris. I went on one date in Amsterdam. I talked to a woman in Barcelona. There was a woman in Zurich that I just never really connected with. Otherwise, yeah, I was mostly in London, which is kind of complicated, and I'm open to, because I'd like to have more of my life in London. But what I'm really looking for, ultimately, I've also come to realize, is someone here in Paris that I can share my life with. So did it work? No. I'm still single today. It didn't work in that sense. Like, it didn't come together for me. I don't begrudge the matchmaking service, because they did their job. They lived up to their promises. They introduced me to some phenomenal women. Everybody on paper was amazing. Like, you heard these women's life stories and their passions and what they were good at, what they went through, all the stuff. And it was always hands down just, whoa, this woman is a saint. How am I a match for her? Like I said, a couple women that I gave it a try with, or one that I would have given it a try with. And I did end up dating somebody for a bit. So I know with relative certainty that, like, it's not me being avoidant. It's not me being unhealthy so much. It's just like really learning to listen to that. Like, no, like I don't have to say yes to everybody in the end. Like, I only really want to say yes to one person. And ultimately it was absolutely worth it. I think the hesitation to say that it was worth it for a while came from the fact that the following year was really tough, and I should have probably not spent on the coaching as well. In retrospect, I'm glad we got some coaching. It was way too much. Looking back through these journals, I was going through so much all at once. That's kind of how I've lived most of my life. I could have pumped the brakes on the coaching and saved a little bit of money, but I don't regret the pursuit. And I think, if nothing else, like, I'm at a place now too where I'm like really good being alone, because I'm not alone. You know what I mean? Like, I have amazing friends. I have my family. I have certain members of my family, a lot of my family, not so much. I don't feel lonely in that way anymore. And I've learned to really appreciate the love that I have in my life far more as a result of all this. I do really want to meet somebody. I do want to have sex. I do want to have a partner. I do want to have somebody that I travel with, that I share my life with. I would like to have that experience in so many ways. But at the same time, I also know how good I have it as I have it now, and I don't need to rush it, and I certainly don't want to ruin it. I will leave you with this, Jesse Gearhart, my patron producer of the day, and all my patrons, obviously. But thank you so much for supporting me through all this. But what have I learned about love through all of this? I think it's this great mystery of life in modernity, like what love is. For whatever reason, we found ourselves in this place where we've been taught since childhood that romantic love is the end all be all, whether that's through Disney or through pop culture, TV, all these things like have taught us so many things that I don't think are healthy or helpful. And I've known that, but it's so hard to get away from it. I've had to learn a lot about what love looks like as an adult because I suffered a deep lack of it as a child. And that's also what serves to make it hard for me to believe in and hard for me to believe I'm worthy of, or hard to believe that it's even available to me. And so much of what I've learned about love has come through my friends and people that have seen me and accepted me, that embrace me despite my worst moments, that know my deepest, darkest secrets, and yet still love me because they're like, yeah. There's been a lot to, like I said, learn through taking care of this dog and realizing that like my affection for him, for Cooper, my dog, has grown over time, but wasn't initially there. It came through practice. It came through showing up and loving him actively as a verb. And that feeling of love, the affection, the warmth came much later. It took a long time for that to develop in me. And I think that's just the way it's going to work for me in a lot of ways. And ultimately, I think I learned that what slowed me down and what's made me not that worried about it, not as interested in dating at this point, not as interested in actively pursuing anyone, for better or for worse, is that I actually have a lot going on right now in a lot of good ways. Life's still challenging. It's obviously the world is crazy and so much is going wrong. But from a personal standpoint, I don't lack for love. If I lack for anything, what I need to do is practice that love. I need to practice on the people that are already in my life and develop it to be something that naturally extends itself to a woman that does come into my life and is not someone for whom I'm waiting to express love or to extend it to. Anyways, I think that's the matchmaking video. I'm pretty sure I've been holding on to this one for a good 2 years. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to me share something that's been really scary for me, and I've actually really resisted. I'm mostly over this, but there's still an echo of like the embarrassment of being single. I know women are embarrassed to have boyfriends now, so that's not a good combination, but like, the embarrassment of being an old man and single in Paris. But now I really have a lot of compassion for myself, for how hard it's been, for the struggle that I've had to go through to get to where I'm at. And the fact that I'm even possibly ready for a relationship today is a huge testament to the amount of work I've done and to the love that I've been lucky enough to experience in the last few years especially. So very grateful. And it's going to feel really good to have this done and out in the world, and I can focus on this year's going to be a good year. There's a lot of really fun, cool stuff to happen. So let's just go. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support my channel, there's a lot of fun exploring of Paris and the rest of France to come. Patreon's the place to support that and to get to vote on some stuff. Haven't even talked really about that publicly yet, but there's going to be some good stuff coming. And if you'd like to know more about my history, my background, Sea of the Unknown is the book you can get, and there's another one coming on the way. That'll get even more into the depths and details of all the stuff we talked about today. I'm going to keep talking if I don't shut the camera off now, so bye.